Hello, everyone. How are you? It's Sean and Ellie here for WhoCulture. Hope you've been well. It's been a while since we've recorded one of these. In fact, this might be the first recording we've done in 2023. Ellie,
that's
how
not
you doing?
True.
Are you well?
Yeah, I'm well, but that's not true.
Is it not?
No. We broke down the trailer. Come on, Sean.
The week between Christmas and New Year's.
No, it wasn't.
When does 2023 start for you?
It didn't. I was away that week.
You were not.
So recorded in the first week of January.
Did we?
Yeah.
It's been a weird year so far, everybody. So yeah, okay, right, okay. So we better get into our videos then. Right. So obviously, we quite recently broke down the trailer for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, apparently. But this week, we're talking about there's been rumblings of a certain character who might be returning to the Whoniverse, which we will get into that now in a moment. But we're going to start with TARDIS tidbits.
Woo! TARDIS tidbits! I have to bash my elbow.
I mean, listen, we try and make videos for you, but we'll see. We'll see. Right, okay. Ellie, what do we got first?
Okay, tidbit number one is that the BBC and Doctor Who official have announced the return of Kate Stewart.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so we've got Gemma Redgrave back as Kate Stewart, and we kind of had already seen this in some of the released images of filming, but the casting of Aneurin Barnard as Roger A.P. Gwilliam.
Excellent. Cool.
Right. So just before we go on to that, we just want to just tell you how long we spent trying to figure out how to pronounce those Welsh names, because let me tell you, Welsh, not an easy group of names to find the pronunciations of.
No, in fact, please, this is going to be a difficult one because how do you do this in the comments? But if Ellie has just butchered the pronunciation of that name, and I'm not saying I can do any better, by the way, please somehow let us know, because we tried everything.
I think that's right. Aneurin Barnard playing Roger A.P. Gwilliam.
Nice. Nice.
Can't not do it in a Welsh accent, really, can you?
Not really. I tried to do Welsh and it came out as like Hungarian or something, so that's pretty much as good as it gets.
Right, but anyway, Kate Stewart. Let's get back on topic. Kate Stewart is back, and there's been some leaked images of Gemma Redgrave and Millie Gibson filming together. And that sparked a little bit of speculation that maybe Ruby Sunday is Kate Stewart's daughter. I like the idea. Yep. I kind of do and I kind of don't. I think people have got a little bit fixated on characters all having to be connected to each other, and sometimes it's nice to just have new characters.
That is true. That's one of I think the biggest criticisms, for example, of say the Star Wars universe, or at least the Star Wars film universe, is that everyone's a Skywalker or a Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
Or a Solo, I guess. But and it's just like, not everyone has to be, like you said, not everyone has to be related. I do kind of like, but then I do like the idea of Ruby being part of that legacy of Lethbridge Stewart's, but then she could just be her own thing as well.
Yeah, but what I quite like is there was a lot of kind of comments when they announced the character's name of Ruby Sunday that it kind of seemed a little bit made up. It seems like a kind of character name, but not a character name like she's a character in Doctor Who. It's almost like the character herself has given herself an alias kind of thing. And there is suggestion that if she is the daughter of Kate Stewart, but perhaps there's kind of an estrangement there, that she kind of wanted to remove herself from that Stewart name. But there's also been speculation that maybe Ruby Sunday is a member of UNIT. She might work for UNIT. She might not be related to Kate Stewart, but she may well be familiar with UNIT. Or she could just, Kate Stewart might have just banged her front door down and said, "You've just met an alien. We need to debrief you." Which is probably more likely.
This is very possible, yeah, in the world of Doctor Who, it absolutely is. But yeah, I mean, like I'm kind of cool with all of the above because that's it. I'll pretty much just take anything. Just give us Doctor Who back.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to have Kate back. I really like Kate Stewart as a character, and she's actually the only character who now has met every Doctor, right? So she met 10 and 11. and 12 and 13, potentially 14 if Unit is involved in those 60th specials, then she may well be in those. And now 15, we assume. I mean, there's no confirmation that she actually meets the Doctor. We have yet, but I think it's a given that they will interact with each other.
Maybe it mean if she doesn't.
Yeah. No, I think she definitely will. But yeah, it's very interesting that she's one of the few characters to have met so many incarnations of the Doctor.
I think so, because that name that is never far from your lips, I think, is the previous one to have met the most incarnations since the revival.
Especially when you include Big Finish as well.
Yes.
I mean, if you include Big Finish, then I think then she maybe actually overtakes potentially. But I don't have the actual figures in front of me to confirm whether that's true or not.
So moving on from Ellie's entire lack of research, we have a couple of filming updates. Not much, but there is the revelation of a slug. Now that sounds like a little bit of okay, Sean, but because very little details. There's been these pictures from filming have arrived of. I mean, it's a slug. It's a big one, and it's got little feelers and everything.
Kind of goes up. It's not a slug that like slithers. It's like a slug that sits up, and I don't know. They're very strange looking, aren't they? And
there's also that one picture of it, I'm hoping, giving a hug to a kid. Otherwise, that kid's getting dissolved face first.
It's very... Do you know what? It's very... In a good way, I think. It's very Absorber-Loffy. It's one of those ones that's kind of a little bit ridiculous to look at. And I guess maybe once you actually have the context of what they're doing, it's going to be more terrifying. But from what we've got, it's a little bit like, this is like my Doctor Who. I kind of can't wait. It feels really like a callback to 2005, 2006. In fact, pretty much most of Russell T Davies's first era.
Oh, and fairness, it's funny because you're dead right. And it's like, oh, it's very like classic Who as well. When, obviously it's a well-told joke, but like, oh, there was a budget of £5. And kind of like you got her. I did see some clips resurface recently, Ellie, and I was just like, no. And well done, every person on that set, for not breaking down laughing. But yeah, so we've got like there's a few more. There's like unit trucks, so does Kate Stewart. New, I think we discussed already Ruby's outfit reveal that was done online as well. So not an awful lot really since the last time we recorded, which I maintain was in 2022. I will not be swayed on this. But moving on safely to our main topic. Right. So, yes, there has been, this is big news, right? So it's still rumor that a very important character will be returning to Doctor Who, and they will be returning for the first time officially since 1983. Now, there was something in 1993, but that's not canon. That was a EastEnders special. Which we like EastEnders, don't get me wrong, but we're talking about Susan Foreman, who is, of course, the Doctor's granddaughter. Ellie, as a fan of Doctor Who Revival mostly, what do you know about Susan Foreman?
So I'll be honest and say I don't know masses about her, having not watched the entirety of classics. I mean, of course, I am aware of who she is. I'm aware that she was there in the very first episode, and I can't say an unearthly child. It's like a tongue twister. And was in fact the unearthly child, which you did inform me of earlier, so I won't pretend that I knew that beforehand. And then her final appearance, or like as a main companion or character, was in the Dalek invasion of Earth. Of course, being the Doctor's granddaughter. She did come back for the Five Doctors and obviously Dimensions in Time as well, but we haven't really seen much of her, haven't really heard much about her since then.
Doctor Who canon is hilarious because it was I want to say it was the second or third Doctor before we got the name Gallifrey. I think it was the third Doctor before we got No, the Time Lords were around for the second Doctor, but I think Gallifrey got name dropped with the third Doctor. So these kind of things, they were obviously making it up as they went along. That's absolutely fine. So retcon, Susan is a Time Lord, but at the time, no, she wasn't. That kind of way, but she was an alien.
Yeah, it's very odd, isn't it? Because in a logical mind now, if it's the Doctor's granddaughter, she must be a Time Lord.
Exactly.
But I don't think they thought about it in that much detail at the time.
There's a story from an interview for the Five Doctors where Carol Ann Ford and it was Richard Herndl, who had been recast because William Hartnell passed away at that point. And apparently the producer said, listen, don't mention anything about the grandfather-granddaughter thing. And they both laughed hysterically at the producers. They were like, yeah, no. Like, that's hilarious. Like, this is their entire relationship is the fact that it's grandfather-granddaughter. So in a way, I think they were, in the Five Doctors anyway, they were going to retcon the whole, the familial connection there. And yeah, thankfully, people went, yeah, no.
No, the thing is, when you've got a fan base as big as the Doctor Who fan base that's always growing, you can't underestimate them. And once you've said something out loud, we are going to hold on to that. And we will not let that go. And if you do something that contradicts that, we will be the first to call you out on it.
Exactly. Actually, Joe, I probably should have mentioned this in the beginning, is the reason why we think Susan is coming back is that recently the BBC put out a tweet and an Instagram post where it was a still image of Susan from that famous scene in the Dalek invasion of Earth. It's you've probably, even if you don't watch Classic Who, you know the scene. It's where the Doctor's like, one day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. It's that scene. That's him saying goodbye to Susan. And Russell D. Davis commented going, I wonder whatever happened to her. I'm like, Russell, you might as well just tweet out a picture of her on set, like, at this point.
Yeah. And the thing is with Russell is he's the king of hints and like wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of things. He doesn't do things without meaning.
That is very true. Like, yeah, like as we learned, kind of Torchwood name dropped in season 1 of the revival, didn't arrive then until season 2, that kind of thing.
I think it's because he knows exactly what we've just said. He knows that fans will read into everything. Yes. Yeah. So he's very careful about when and what he says.
There's the other thing as well is how when the 50th anniversary came around, she was quite conspicuously missing. And the reason I say that is because we were wrapping up the Time War. We were dealing head on with the Doctor's legacy, and there was no mention of Susan. Now, not obviously the Day of the Doctor. I really like it. It's great special. It was written in such a way that they didn't need Susan, but they still never addressed the fact that, well, did she age? Did she regenerate? What's going on?
Yeah.
Carol Ann Ford. She was a presenter at the BBC Prom's 50th anniversary. So she was at least tangentially involved in the celebrations for the 50th, and she has done Big Finish as well.
Yeah. I do feel like the 60th is a really good opportunity to do that.
Yes.
I mean, if they haven't done it in the 50th, the 60th seems like the most obvious choice, particularly because we've already then had the return of Ian Chesterton at the end of The Power of the Doctor. And if you want to celebrate an anniversary like that, then the best way to do that is linking back to those classic eras and what came before and the way it started. And the fact that we haven't seen Susan at all, and like I said, have barely mentioned Susan at all, just seems like such a missed opportunity. And she seems like a character that actually could be brought back very easily. I mean, as we've just said, if, knowing what Doctor Who is like now, you could easily bring her back. She's a Time Lord. So to have Carol Ann Ford come back now and kind of bring that journey of hers full circle, but then Susan could so easily regenerate and you could have a whole new, what's the word I'm looking for? The whole new generation of viewers with Susan, but they just don't think of Carol Ann Ford as Susan. They think of someone else, but the character still lives on.
I think so. And it'll be interesting as well because very possible that let's say in our fan theorizing right now, the 60th anniversary special will feature the 14th Doctor. I think because Ncuti Gatwa has the face of a cherub and is so youthful, whereas I want to phrase this carefully because David Tennant is a ridiculously handsome man. It might make visually a little more sense to have David Tennant and Carol Ann Ford than maybe Ncuti Gatwa and Carol Ann Ford, because Ncuti Gatwa looks so much younger. Oh my God, I feel so bad saying that.
No, but also, I think also in that same way, people have been kind of maybe criticizing so many links and kind of teasing fans by so many things from the past. But that's what an anniversary special is for. So I think if you bring a character back, do it in an anniversary special. Yes. And then when it's Ncuti Gatwa's turn, that's when it becomes something new. So
and a bit like, actually, if we think about the 50th, the teasing of Attack Eyebrows, but we were still very much celebrating what came before with a little bit of a tease of, all right, Capaldi's coming. Yeah. I don't think they'll do exactly the same thing, but I do suspect there will be something. Obviously, we've talked about how Ncuti might be involved more than we think. I think, Ellie will kill me for doing this now, but when hopefully we return to Who Watch Wednesdays this year, we will try and explore some episodes featuring Susan as well to give a little bit of context as to who she is to the Doctor. It could be, we could be way off base here. Susan might never be going near the TARDIS again. And I would see. I really want to know. I want to see that initial reaction. One day I shall come back. Well, you took your time.
I know. Actually, it'd be quite funny to have Susan now as an old lady and be like, "What sort of time do you call this? I've been waiting my entire life. You just left me here and buggered off."
Now, one thing I suppose I must say as well, because this is obviously we're sitting here and we theorize, and it's like, oh, wouldn't this all be well and good? Possible support to this theory comes from, so there's Daniel RPK is a movie industry scooper, right? And on his Patreon account, he's after saying Susan will be back for the 60th. So you might be like, okay, that's great. Somebody also said this will happen. Well, actually, he's been quite good with getting scoops out, and he's got quite a good track record. Now, maybe not so much for Doctor Who, but even about a year before Doctor Strange 2 came out, he dropped, spoiler for Multiverse of Madness, just throwing that out there, he reported that Wanda would fight somebody from the Fox verse, the X-Men Fox verse, and of course the next thing we see, Wanda's fighting Patrick Stewart as Professor X in Multiverse of Madness. And he also dropped, we would have mentioned it before, he dropped that Tennant and Catherine Tate would be returning for 360th specials, and we now know he was right. Mm-hmm. So it's not that this is the fact that he said it doesn't mean there you go, it's an ironclad contract, but it is a pretty good indicator.
It is. I also think that if they don't do it now, they may miss their window.
There's that as well.
You want to put it delicately, but I mean, this is the 60th, and Carol Ann Ford is, in her 80s. And while that can mean absolutely nothing, it means that, if you wait another 10 years for the 70th, have you missed your window there? You want to get them while they're still able to, and you can't really go much further back than someone who was in the very first episode. We didn't direct it solely at Susan, but we did put out, if you could choose one character to return for the 60th, who would it be? I'm just going to rattle off some names. Obviously, straight away, my suggestion, of course, no surprises, would be River. And we did have quite a lot of people suggesting the same thing. But we also had, who else have we got on here that says River? We've got, that also says River. The Meddling Monk, K9, Ace, again. Susan was one that came up quite a lot, actually. I feel like out of all of the names that did come up as responses, Susan actually was, without us giving any hints as to what the topic of this week's discussion was, Susan did come up quite a lot. Sarah Jane came up, which just made me really sad because we know that it obviously isn't actually possible. but that would be brilliant. I think I would also like to see more of Joe Grant.
Yes.
Katie
She's so
Manning just
fun.
seems like such a fun person.
Yeah.
We did have Adric on there. We know how
Yeah.
Sean feels about Adric, but
What? Hey, I would like to see Adric back. Justice for Adric.
But I think by far the best suggestion that I have seen is Banner Cafalata.
Can I call you Banner? No.
Honestly, I would like to see Banner Cafalata back as well. That would be brilliant.
He was really
we
good.
did have a lot of suggestions, but we'd be here all day if we went through the entire list. But there's a few that people suggested.
Okay, cool. Everyone, catch us over on Twitter at WhoCulture. Catch us on Instagram at WhoCulture. I'm at Sean Ferrick on the various socials.
You're looking at me to say mine, aren't you? Yes.
Yep.
My name, I'm at eLittleChild on Twitter, ellie.littlechild on Instagram. You can find this exclusively on YouTube first, but then it will eventually find its way to your various podcast streaming services as well.
And don't forget to send all of your love and respect to at Dan the Meegs, who has to turn this into some sort of viewable feature. All right. Thanks, everybody. Keep it wibbly wobbly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.